Hey, you're listening to Stop the Scroll, a social media marketing podcast, and I'm your host, Heidi Schmidt. I'm a social media strategist and agency owner with over 15 years of marketing experiences helping businesses grow online. We'll be diving into what you need to know so that you can show up confidently online without the overwhelm. Get your notebook ready to jot down some amazing marketing gems, and let's dive into it. Welcome back to another great episode of Stop the Scroll. I'm super jazzed today. I have an exciting guest on here. We're going to be talking with Dan Coughlin, and he is a seasoned digital marketing strategist and co-founder and managing director of Get Hyped. His expertise lies in developing creative storytelling strategies and compelling content that drives conversions and enhances ROI. Alongside his wife, Christina, an established Instagram foodie influencer. That's fascinating. I really want to chat a little bit about that. He has developed innovative marketing strategies that deliver measurable results for consumer brands, and he's worked with some really cool brands. So welcome, Dan. I am really excited to chat with you today. Tell me more about you, your agency, and some of these exciting brands that you guys have worked with.
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if I'm seasoned. I always get like a little bit awkward and embarrassed when I'm getting interviewed, like who is she talking about? Like,
There's probably something punny in there if your wife is a foodie influencer, like seasoned in the food. I mean,
nice. I like that. I didn't pick up on that one at all. Yeah.
there could be.
Her food is she's more of a sweet, not a savory kind of person, right? So her Instagram was all about like gluten-free brownies, but still decadent. I wouldn't call them low calorie. We'd call them better for you, right? Better for you ingredients, but it's definitely not diet food. That's for sure. Yeah.
I love that. So tell us about Get Hyped. How did you kind of start your agency, and how did you kind of get into working with some of these consumer brands?
Yeah, so it was a journey with my wife from the start. I think it was probably back in like 2017. Her and I both had jobs for corporations, and we were a little unhappy, and we kind of just decided together, like, hey, one of us is going to start a business. And it was almost like a coin flip, but my wife won, and I kept working to put food on the table for my job, which I wasn't a huge fan of at the time. But luckily, we made the right choice because we're super happy now. But to get there, my wife started an Instagram from scratch back, and it was a little easier to grow back then, but it was still pretty hard. She treated it like a full-time job for a whole year, and she got from, essentially 0 followers on Instagram in the foodie niche, like you mentioned, to 25,000 followers, which we would consider, a very solid micro influencer status within 1 year. And she did that for like engagement pods and just really staying loyal to her audience, always commenting and responding to comments from people, always trying to add value to her audience, which I think is something that gets missed quite a bit. Like your audience would probably appreciate this, of like social media success takes a lot of work from a business owner's perspective. And I see a lot of my clients that seem to think sometimes like, hey, I can just pay someone to do my social media and forget about it, and really, I think that's that outlook is a mistake, because it's like your customer service email, right? You want to be involved with your customers. Now you want to be talking with them, but kind of going down a tangent there. I want to answer your question.
Oh no, we're going to touch on that because I think that that's so important. Me and my team, we do engagement for our clients, but it's never as authentic as when my clients do it. And you hit it kind of right on the head. You can outsource your marketing, but you really have to be engaged in outsourcing it. You have to be involved. Like I tell all my clients, you should be on the app every day too. Yes, you're a busy business owner, but like take 10 minutes and just scroll through. Like, I don't know who the ideal accounts that you want to be engaging with are. Like, I can kind of guess and we can do that engagement, but it's always, always, always better when they also have a hand in that.
Yes, 100%. You can see a night and day difference on performance of social media for businesses that don't want to do it, and they just kind of say like, okay, it's your problem now, and outsource it to anybody. And that doesn't even have to be an agency. That can be an in-house employee that they kind of just alienate, of like, oh, I don't want to deal with social media, you do it. But then they wonder why it doesn't work that well. And you're right, it is like you need that participation, right? I always tell my clients, like, whatever marketing that I'm doing for you with our agency, it's not the only marketing that you need to do. It's just another piece that fits into your integrated holistic strategy and makes everything work better, right? But it's very much a team approach. But anyway, get back to my story, right? So my wife started with her Instagram, started getting some brand deals from businesses, and then some name brand businesses like Panera and things like that that people would know, offering her hundreds of dollars, sometimes thousands of dollars in free products to do posts in the foodie niche. But she started kind of getting burnt out as a creator. And I think a lot of business owners don't, when it comes to content creators, they don't appreciate the time that a lot of these content creators have to put in to building their audience. And we can chat about that too later.
Yeah.
She got burnt out, and some of the small businesses that were attempting to communicate with her, she landed one of them as a client by offering like, hey, I can help you work with creators like myself. And that's how Get Hyped was born. She got her first brand client as like an influencer campaign, helped them out. It was a men's apparel swimwear brand, really small campaign, but it went well. And we started taking more influencer marketing type campaign deals with various brands and clients. And now 6, 7 years later, we've grown into Get Hyped, which is a content creator focused social media marketing agency, right? That's, basically we make money for your business, specifically small businesses, by utilizing social media.
That's incredible. So you
Yeah.
guys really understand the influencer space and how to connect those brands with influencers. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's our differentiator. It is because there's a lot of nuances in the whole influencer space. And then, for a while, influencer was kind of like a dirty word on social media where people didn't want influencers anymore. And I feel like small businesses specifically, 9 out of 10 of them at least, think that like the 10-year-old influencer marketing strategy is still a valid strategy. And what I mean by that is we're going to find this influencer, we're going to pay them X amount of dollars for a sponsored post. And then as the business, we're going to get some multiple of return on that investment from sales that happen directly from that influencer's post. And while that still does happen, it's very, very hard to do for small businesses at scale and on a repeatable basis, month after
Mm-hmm.
month. Right. Of course, there's always going to be unicorns. Of course, you're going to get lucky sometimes, but as like a viable, repeatable, consistent marketing strategy, that is for the most part dead. And the reason is like in this post-COVID environment, you have all these big giant companies that have recognized the power of influencer marketing, and they're all coming in and they're all wanting smaller and smaller influencers to partner with their brand to do promotions. So that's driven the market rate of influencers that are high quality really through the roof, right? It goes up
Mm-hmm.
every quarter and really pushing out the affordability aspect for small businesses. So that ship has kind of sailed for like influencers being a cheap way to get ROI for marketing. What you have to do now is you have to partner with your influencers strategically and run paid advertising through their posts, right? With something called content amplification or influencer
Mm-hmm.
whitelisting.
Okay. So how do you guys connect content creators to your clients? Because I'm assuming that your clients are the brands. How do you guys find those content creators and influencers? And I think you're absolutely right. Like influencer used to be such a dirty word, but
Mhm.
now they're just another tool that brands need to use. And I see clients of mine, they get user generated content without even asking for it. How do brands really connect with those influencers and amplify that user generated content?
Good question. Yeah, like we started using really referring to them as content creators instead of influencers. And
Mm-hmm.
the only difference for anybody in the audience that isn't aware is that influencer is like a subset of content creator, where a content creator envelops everybody who can basically make content on social media, right? If you can make an Instagram reel, it doesn't really matter how many followers you have. If you can make good content, you're a content creator. So content creators in general are way more affordable because they haven't amassed a giant following. So they don't charge as much. So for a small business, strategically, it makes a whole lot more sense for them to work with content creators to get things like UGC or do whitelisting for a paid strategy on social or things like that. So there's a lot of, when it comes to content creators and even influencers, agencies like myself, like when you go to a conference and you ask every agency, small or large, what's the toughest part about influencer marketing? They're always going to say sourcing creators, right? Finding the right creators is not easy. There is no one right way to do it. And even the biggest, most experienced professionals in the space struggle still with it.
Hmm.
It's a very, very creative and manual process, right? Because what you're essentially doing is you're vetting people, right? And influencers and content
Hmm.
creators are people. So you're looking at someone's entire portfolio of content, you're looking them at their personal brand, and you're making a decision, right, on the client's behalf with the client's input and feedback of like, does this person and what they represent with their content on social media make an accurate representation of this brand who is my client? So you're trying to get that brand fit, the personality fit, and everything all in one. And then you need your client to agree with you, right?
Yeah.
So that part of the whole execution of an influencer or a content creator campaign, the sourcing and then the deciding on who is going to represent the brand, that is the secret sauce. That is the toughest part because there's a lot of opinion that goes into it, right? But there's also a lot of
Hmm.
data and metrics that go into it, a lot of experience that goes into it as well. And as far as finding those people, we use every possible channel to find them, right? We're going to use SaaS that's out there that we subscribe to
Hmm.
in the industry. Those creator sourcing or influencer sourcing platforms that exist for a subscription basis. You can get them as a brand or as an agency. We're absolutely going to rely on that. We have a network of content creators over the past 7 years that we've partnered with for various campaigns. We call that like, our tried and true list, our proven influencers, right?
Yeah.
Well, of course, we're going to go to them for new partnerships because we already know they're a good person, right? They follow through, right? Because when you're actually vetting influencers, there's a few main categories, right? It's like, do their social metrics look good? Do they look good on paper? That's great. But then
Hmm.
the other one too is like, can you rely on them, right?
Yeah.
A big part of influencer marketing is like you have this campaign that you're designing for your client and or for your business, and you have dates that need to post, and you're sending products to people and you're working with them like a partner, and then sometimes things happen, right? And people just disappear, right? So there's a reliability factor on the influencer side that comes into their rate. That's why you tend to see like you hear this clickbait all the time on if you Google influencer marketing, like micro influencers are the new secret for small businesses, right? Because they're affordable. And like the problem with micro influencers that those articles don't talk about though is that in general, I'm overgeneralizing, but a lot of established brands don't work with micro influencers because they tend to be on average a lot less reliable than influencers that are larger, mid-tier and above.
And I think the mid-tier and larger influencers, because they know that this is probably their job, like this is their income, that probably feeds into that reliability, right?
Hmm.
And also, like if you're early in that content creator phase and you're just starting to work with brands, to your point, like it's a lot of work. It's a
Hmm.
lot of work creating that content. And for someone who's like, I'm going to be a content creator, they don't necessarily understand like deliverables and contracts. What do you guys do with content creators and slash influencers who try to say like, and it's been a really long time since I've worked with influencers, but back in, the early 2010s, I was an influencer. I did some brand campaigns way back in the day. But what do you do about those content creators who are like, well, if I'm going to say review a product and I don't like it or it feels off for my audience, so I'm not going to review it. Like, what do you guys do in those situations? Do you have a clause in contracts? Like, how do you kind of account for that?
Absolutely. You're exactly right. We do have a clause in the contracts that say if you don't like or enjoy the product or don't want to promote it for any reason, keep it and just let us know. Well, no questions asked. We'll just void your agreement because you're 100% correct. You never want any influencer partner to promote your product unless they're in love with it because any audience has that sixth sense of they can know when they're being sold to. So if
Mm-hmm.
that authenticity isn't actually there, it's not going to come off in the content and that content won't perform well. So yeah, some that it happens from time to time. Like influencers are just like, I got the product, didn't really love it. They're honest with us. We appreciate the honesty. And we say, no worries. And we just go find a replacement for that person.
How do you guys handle when things feel super scripted? Like a campaign comes out, a content creator creates content, but it feels just very, very scripted and not necessarily authentic to them. Like content's great, but it just comes off as like, this feels like it's talking points. I'm sure you've seen those campaigns. How do you guys handle that? Because I feel like that's something that brands are wary of. If you're investing in user generated content, you want it to be authentic. You don't want to feel like it's salesy, that it's just kind of someone's reading those talking points or bullet points.
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple different ways. Like one, it's how you structure the contracts, right? So in the contracts, we write in a certain number of revisions and reshoots are allowed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also on the brand or the agency running the campaign to how they create their influencer brief and how they communicate to that influencer or content creator the expectations. So you will find brands and agencies that create briefs for campaigns that are overly scripted.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, the more name brand the brand is, the bigger the brief gets and the more requirements are in there. It's what you would expect, right? A household name brand is going to have so many compliance and legal requirements that their influencer partnerships do sound more like an ad because they don't have any choice but to follow all those legal requirements for the size of the company. But that's an advantage for smaller businesses, right? Smaller businesses don't have all that compliance and legal loopholes to jump through normally in their industry, and they can allow more creative freedom in their briefs when they present them to influencers and content creators. So that's generally what we go towards is like talking points are very vague and very high level, right? Not
Mm-hmm.
like full
Yeah.
sentences. Everybody can't just read them off, right? And if they do, if it does sound like they're just reading off the brief, we nicely ask them to reshoot the content.
Got it. And this kind of is a good segue because you mentioned something about the importance of storytelling and marketing. And I feel like content creators are a great way for brands to do that because, it kind of touches on that authenticity. It's out in the wild content, it's real life. It's not necessarily just, your team dancing in the background on a reel. How do you coach your clients on that storytelling aspect? Not just in like working with content creators, but also just in general, because I feel like so many small businesses think that all of their content has to have that purpose of generating leads. How do you kind of get them out of that mindset?
So two things is I always start with marketing 101, right? People prefer to buy from people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I try to say, like, think of when talking to like a CMO or a small business owner, put yourself in the shoes of the consumer for the products that you like to purchase, right? Would you rather buy
Mm-hmm.
something on a recommendation from friends and family, or would you rather buy something from an ad that you saw that was just a picture of the product or picture of the service, right? And the answer is always the former, right? They want when you hear
Mm-hmm.
something from a friends and family recommendation, you're always much more likely to go check out and purchase that, right? Because it's that close know, like, and trust type recommendation or testimonial. Influencers are just one step above friends and family when it comes psychologically to a trust level for consumers. So that's what conversation I have. The other one with clients around this is that there's the marketing rule of seven, right? You need like multiple touch points with your
Mm-hmm.
target audience before they feel comfortable enough to become a customer. So influencers can really help with that as well as adding another channel to add that kind of trust and authority and touch points with the business for potential customers.
You kind of mentioned marketing 101, and a lot of us think like, oh, I know my audience, I know who my audience is. But one thing that they don't often think about is that customer journey. They don't think about the journey that the customer needs to go through once they make that decision to buy. Talk about how you help your clients discover what that customer journey is, or how businesses, they're rethinking kind of their marketing, listening to this. What factors should they consider as they map out their own customer's journey?
Yeah, so tying in what you said about storytelling content and tying in your customer journey. And then also business owners tend to think about like marketing equals leads, right? I like to think about it as marketing is about relationships, right? And relationships don't end at the initial sale.
Hmm.
Relationships go for the lifetime. So I always encourage my clients to think about any kind of marketing that they're doing as lifetime relationship of communication with your customer, right? So it starts as cold, meaning for any business, there's a huge part of your target audience that has never heard of you before. So the last thing you want to do is market to a cold audience with some kind of strong call to action, which we see
Hmm.
quite a bit, right? It's like,
Yep.
I'm going to run this ad to everybody out there in the universe and it's going to say 20% off something, right? And you're like, why would you do that? Because why would you even give a discount to someone that's never heard of you before, right? It just doesn't make any sense. We have to start with awareness type marketing at the top of the funnel. So I often, when I'm communicating with clients, I draw a whiteboard on Zoom and I break down their marketing funnel, top, middle, and bottom, because most business owners aren't thinking about their marketing funnel as having layers, and they're not thinking about bringing leads in and nurturing them through the funnel, right, down to actually becoming a customer and then staying a repeat customer at the bottom of their funnel. So constantly reminding business owners that you can't speak to all of your audience the exact same way. You should have some variety and some strategy, some nurture content out there, right?
Hmm.
Channels like YouTube are really good for nurturing, especially when your business has a high ticket item, right? Because I think that a lot of business owners also forget that if your price point is small, like for example, under $100, it may be easier for people to make an impulse buying decision on that. So your
Hmm.
sales cycle is much shorter. But especially businesses with larger price points, they're going to have a larger sales cycle. And that makes that importance of that nurture content in the consideration phase of their funnel is that much more critical. And I see a lot of businesses missing that, which is really good for social media, really good for influencers and content creators. Have that social proof out there at
Hmm.
scale, right? Digitally that says like, okay, yeah, I heard of this brand before. I saw an ad. It's a little pricey. I don't know about that, but they're all over YouTube and I hear influencers talking about them and people are raving about it. And then before you know it, they're at those 7 touch points and they decide to make a purchase decision.
It's really funny that you mentioned that because my husband, I told him, I was like, we need to do a series on TikTok with you because he is so easily influenced by Instagram advertising. He might see an ad once, and like if the reel is super compelling, like the Instagram ad is super compelling, he'll be like, "Ooh, I want that." And then he'll see it again and then he'll just buy it.
Right.
So,
Right. I call that eyewitness testimony. Like a lot of my clients that are selling high ticket items, for example, they might have a question if their lead is booking a call, right? And because they're selling a high ticket service or their conversion event is a booked call, they usually have a form like, where'd you hear about us? Or even if it's an
mhm.
e-commerce brand, right? Where'd you hear about us? And it's a multiple choice thing. I think that whole line of questioning is a mistake. It should be, where'd you hear about us? Select all that apply, right? Because what ends
Yeah.
up happening, and this is why I call it eyewitness testimony, because eyewitness testimony in a court on the stand is highly unreliable. And everyone can agree with that it's not reliable in court because people forget even what they saw, but they're very
Hmm.
convinced in their mind that they did, right? They're convinced that they're right, but they're wrong most of the time. And it goes back to that marketing rule of seven, right? You may see an ad a couple times, forget that you saw it, and then decide later you're going to buy, right? And then just say, oh, yeah, I saw this ad and I bought it. But really, you don't remember you had seen that brand in other places. But of course, you're right. There are people that do see the very first time they see something, they're going to buy. They're the unicorns, though. They're the anomaly. There's people on the
Okay.
other side of the bell curve, too, right? There's people that need
Yeah.
15 or more touch points before they decide to buy.
I had a client that I worked with before, and they had a really long buying cycle. And I had gone to the inbound conference, and I had to keep reminding them that, like, there was a little tidbit of information that stuck with me that, like, 95% of your audience is not in, like, they're not ready to buy from you. They're not in market.
No.
So you have to talk to your audience like they're not like you're not trying to sell to them because chances are 90% of the people that you're marketing to either aren't ready or don't know that they need you yet.
Yep. That's why 95% of your marketing should be value adding, right? Not strong
Hmm.
call to action, right? I mean, this is taken out of like the I'm a big Alex Hormozy fan, right? When he talks about sales and marketing all the time. And, I think he uses the analogy of putting deposits or withdrawals out of the bank and compounding interest, right? If every time you ask your audience to buy, that's a withdrawal. And if you always are making asks, your balance is going to be small because you're always making withdrawals, right? But if you want to have this big balance with your audience, you want to have this massive audience, it's got to be value, value, value all the time. And that's how we work as an agency. And that's how we got all of our clients is like, stay away from the always running promotions, always sending out emails. Every social media post has a call to action. Click the link in my bio, buy now, 10% off. Nobody wants to follow that. Nobody wants to be part of that audience,
Hmm.
right? People want to be part of a company's audience when that company adds value 95% or more of the time.
I love that. Now you have my gears churning because I'm like, ooh, lots of my clients, like they always want a call to action. If it's not an ask, are you asking for engagement or how do you kind of like close that content? Because I feel like everyone's like, you need a hook and you need, a hook in your caption and a hook in your reel and a call to action. Like it sounds like you're kind of like, no, you don't need any of that.
None of it. I'm a strong believer in if you're really providing something valuable and somebody wants to follow, people are savvy. They'll figure out how to become a customer of yours, right? I mean,
Hmm.
every Instagram profile, you should have a link to your website, right? And it's like, if you're providing value and someone's following you and they're seeing all your stuff and you're like, they're going to say, hey, I want to work with Heidi. She sounds like she knows her shit, right? And they're going to be like, how do I find out more information about Heidi? Let's look at her bio. Oh, here's her website. Okay. Here's a schedule a call with Heidi. Cool. Like your audience is savvy. They're not dumb. They can figure it out. Yeah, I tell my clients, you don't need to tell them link in bio in every single post. Like that was 15 years ago strategy. Everyone knows where the links are by this point, right? Everybody
That's
knows.
that
Yep.
is a good point. Kind of touching back to working with influencers slash content creators, how do brands measure success? Because it's not always about how much reach a post got or, how many clicks. Like I tell my clients, I'm like, you have to look at not just the quantitative metrics, but also kind of the qualitative ones. So, how do you coach your clients on measuring success of these campaigns?
It's about setting expectations about what the goals are for working with the influencers or content creators, and then tying that into the brand's holistic marketing strategy, right? I always have all my clients have like some form of a go-to-market strategy that we're following that's holistic, and then I can show how influencers fit into that. Because when you pull that string sometimes with brands, like, okay, what's your holistic strategy for the year? Like, what is all the marketing that you're doing, digital and otherwise? And then how do influencers fit into this so we can get the most ROI out of this influencer investment? And when you ask that question and when you have that conversation, you usually find out that they're thinking about the influencer channel in a vacuum, right? Which is a mistake. It's not good marketing strategy to think about any channel in a vacuum because all your marketing should
Hmm.
work together. So when you look at influencers and you said, hey, should I add this to my marketing strategy overall? Like you should look at, okay, what am I trying to accomplish here? Well, I don't have any social proof for my brand out there right now. I'm running ads. Let's say I'm running ads on Meta and maybe some TikTok. I have a strong email and SMS strategy set up, meaning I have automations and flows in place for any leads that come in or customers. And then I'm sending out campaigns a couple times a week to my email list. And then I'm posting organically on social media too, at least one or two times a week, nothing crazy, but businesses don't, I feel like don't need to post too much more than that. And I'm adding value. I think if that was true for any small business, they have organic social media down, they're running some ads that are doing all right, and they have a communication with their audience through a list building and an email strategy for campaigns, maybe some SMS in there as well. That's a good
Hmm.
time to be like, okay, how do I pour gas on that fire? How do I get that whole holistic strategy to work better? Great. Let's work with some content creators. Let's start with some micro influencers at first, because then they're set up to get the most ROI out of that partnership. I don't just mean monetarily, I mean like you're going to get full funnel results out of working with those content creators. For example, like in that scenario, say I work with a micro influencer. That micro influencer is going to create, say, an Instagram reel for my brand,
Hmm.
right? Sponsored post. They're going to deliver me the original content. I can use that content. I'm going to get rights to use that content from the creator in the agreement I send to them, right? And
Hmm.
then I'm going to run that content through my ad strategy, right? Doing the influencer whitelisting, which is going to get my ads to perform 20 to 50% better on average. So it's not only like the influencers following sees it and you get some link clicks and you get some brand awareness and you probably get some purchases, but not enough, likely not enough to pay for the influencer's investment. But you get that ROI on the paid side where your whole paid campaigns get a boost in performance from running the influencer's content. And then also you have this higher authority social proof type content out there on social media, especially if it's a channel like YouTube that lives forever, where when your customers come into your general funnel and they're in that consideration phase and they're Google searching your company to figure out if they want to buy it or not, they're seeing that social proof. Right. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm like content creators integrating into your holistic strategy. There's just so many benefits from working with them. You just have to communicate and understand as a business owner what all those things are.
I love that. I love that so much. This has been so helpful and insightful. And how can people kind of get in touch with you guys? And do you have any resources to share with our listeners today?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is hyped media.com. We actually have a influencer value calculator that's free that we designed from our 7 years of experience in the industry. It's a free resource right on the website. So any small business, if you're like, hey, I have a YouTuber and they're this many subscribers and I want them to do an integration or I want them to do a dedicated video, it actually has all these drop-down menus. You can select your channel and the deliverables and the size of the influencer, put their following or subscribers in. You hit calculate and it'll give you an approximate average range of what you could expect to pay that content creator or influencer. So a lot of businesses find this useful because they have no idea what the market rate is for good content creators.
Yeah, I know friends of mine who own small businesses local who have worked with content creators. And usually it's just like free product, like, small boutiques. But I think that's really interesting because everyone has this mindset that influencers are so expensive. But it sounds like that's not necessarily the case. And there is kind of a way for smaller size businesses to kind of get that entry level to working with content creators to
Yeah.
build up that social proof. So that's awesome.
Yeah. Any business can out there can use it like a website like billow.com to find you can find a Billow creator for very affordable prices, send them some free product and they'll make you short form social media friendly UGC style videos all day long. I mean, they have a variety of people from different backgrounds and different ages, and it works perfect for any, especially for like e-commerce businesses.
Nice. All right. All of that's going to be linked in the show notes. How can they follow you guys online? I'm assuming you guys are on Instagram and all the social media networks out there.
Yes, we are. We are. We're at Get Hyped Agency across all the big socials. You can follow my personal brand at Dan Get Hyped anywhere on TikTok, Instagram. We're working on getting YouTube set up as well. I have a YouTube channel, but I'm not going to pitch that as I only have one video up so far, but that's coming soon.
It's an investment.
Yeah,
YouTube
yeah.
is a huge investment. I've been slowly like adding videos. I'm like, now I have a dozen or so podcast videos, and I'm like, these all need to go up on YouTube, but it takes me like 4 hours to edit.
Now, our chief officer and lead strategist, his name is Matt Johnston. He has about 2,500 subscribers on his marketing channel on YouTube.
Nice.
And yes, does a ton of value there. He's an excellent video creator and an excellent YouTuber. So I'm taking some notes from him and I'm starting my own channel.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. As always, to the listeners out there, be sure to leave a review, go follow Dan and Get Hyped, and tune in next week for another great episode of Stop the Scroll.